Hey everybody, how you doing? It's your boy Aaron, just coming at you live, man, with another quick episode. Don't got too much time to get on here today, man, so I'm just gonna kind of jump into it, man. There's a little bit of news that I kind of wanted to touch on that I didn't get a chance to touch on yesterday, so I figured, I got like 45 minutes to hop on and go live, and I might as well just touch on it and you know kind of commentate on some of the key issues that I'm seeing today. So that being said, man, let's just go ahead and jump into it. I kind of wanted to talk about what's going on over in Cuba. For those that don't know, Cuba is facing an economic crisis right now. Um, they're expected to run out of oil, I believe, today. And for those that don't know what happens whenever you run out of oil, the economy just stops. Everything stops. You can't do anything. Planes get grounded, buses can't move, cars can't move. The entirety of the country just comes to damn near a halt. So I'm gonna play some news for those of you that aren't too aware of what's going on out there, because I feel like honestly a lot of Americans aren't too aware with what's going on in Cuba at the moment. Um, they tend to focus on all of the other little freaking distractions that are going on at the moment, like which halftime show you watched. But anyway, man, I'll crunch for time today. So let's just go ahead and get into the news, man.
Provided the small island nation with nearly half of its oil, a small lifeline for an already crippled economy. With the arrest and U.S. indictment of former Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and with pressure from the U.S., oil shipments to Cuba have now stopped. Today, Cuba warned international airlines that they will no longer be able to supply planes with jet fuel for at least a month. With rolling blackouts across Cuba, questions remain: how will Cuba survive without the aid of oil from Venezuela or other countries and stave off a humanitarian crisis? Here's ABC's Matt Rivers.
Havana, Cuba. The country's communist government has been plagued with problems over its 6 decades in power, many of its own making. Corruption, aging infrastructure, hurricanes, a struggling economy, international isolation, all pushing today's Cuba to the brink of a humanitarian crisis, and often leaving the island's streets blanketed in darkness. Blackouts, some lasting nearly all day, a common occurrence now. Using only the light of her phone, Idania Acosta pours water from a bucket into a small pot for her family's daily needs. The water, used to cook, bathe, and drink, will have to last Idania, her 2 children, and her ailing mother until the next shipment comes in 10 days.
Los niños están, por supuesto, sin comer, llegan de la escuela, mamá, qué hambre, no sé cuánto, hay que esperar a que venga la corriente.
Unión Eléctrica recorded that 60 to 70% of the island went without electricity in December after a nationwide blackout left around 10 million Cubans without power for several days. Families like the Acostas work and eat by candlelight.
I just I feel like the word collapse is not the right word to use here. Um and first of all, I want people to know that this didn't just happen spontaneously, right? Cuba is experiencing this it's a fuel choke point situation, right? The island is almost entirely dependent on foreign oil, on oil that's imported, oil from places like Venezuela, right? And it doesn't just uh power their buses or their planes, it powers their electric infrastructure. So when their country runs out of oil, they can't sustain even their economic tourism, which is what brings in a majority of the money to the country itself, right? I mean, that's the way that it is with a lot of these island countries, is that they rely on tourism. Places like Puerto Rico, like we talked about yesterday, places like Hawaii, places like Cuba, the Dominican Republic, all of them, they rely on tourism. That's their main cash crop. They don't produce enough to be a self-sustaining country based off of their natural resources, right? And that dependence on everybody else is their failure point as a country, you know what I'm and but it's not um just their fault that they're so self-dependent on other countries. We have uh put pressure on them for years now. I mean, this has been something going on for about 60 years going on, and the difference, I guess, between now and then is that back in the day, the embargoes, the sanctions, they were all on Cuba, but now we're punishing people who are helping Cuba or supplying Cuba with all of these resources. You give oil to Cuba, we're going to tariff you, right? We're going to make life as difficult as we possibly can. So now people are pulling out. Venezuela is no longer sending oil. Mexico is no longer contributing. And Sheinbaum is playing ball because she doesn't want to get invaded by Trump. She doesn't want Big Daddy Trump to come over there and, lay it all out on the table and show them that we got the biggest cock on the block, which is the truth. I mean, we're Big Daddy. You either play ball or you don't get to play at all. That's just the truth, man. So when you got all of this economic pressure that we're putting onto other countries now, they're pulling out, man, because they don't want to get sanctioned either. They don't want to get embargoed. They don't want higher tariffs put onto their product. So Cuba right now is getting ass fucked by the US, by Big Daddy Trump. And you got to ask yourself, for what reason? Why are we doing it? Is it for, do we want regime change? You know, are we doing it just to be dickheads? Who the fuck knows, man?
As the city softly hums with overworked generators. When the power grid doesn't work, only those lucky enough to have generators and enough gas to run them can keep the lights on. And the situation is only expected to get worse.
Es bastante complicado el tema del apagón. Cada día todo peor. Y si no hay una ayuda, aunque sea el petróleo, que es lo que más a nosotros nos favorece, es todo más para atrás y más difícil.
Cuba's already crippled economy is expected to get even weaker after U.S. forces captured Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife early last month. The island nation depended on the oil Venezuela sent over, which according to experts accounted for nearly 50% of their daily oil demand. In exchange, the Cuban government provided personal security and intelligence for the Venezuelan president. But President Trump cutting off that lifeline, writing on social media there would be, quote, no more oil or money going to Cuba.
Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know if they can hold out. But Cuba...
Like I said, man, you have to ask yourself, dude, what is America trying to achieve here, man? I mean, either we're looking for regime change through things like civilian pressure, enough people are just going to be so fed up that they put pressure on all the politicians there, and we get somebody who's going to play a little bit more ball with America, right? Who's going to be answering to the empire, right? I guess another is just to kind of to demonstrate to Latin America that you either align with the US or we're going to make life as fucking difficult for you as possible, that you're going to you're going to pay for not playing. It's kind of a form of a deterrent, right? We're deterring all of these foreign countries to play ball and that we're not fucking around anymore. I mean, everybody's kind of known that for the longest time. I think foreign nations are aware that you don't fuck around with the US, but we've been nice enough to not just throw it in our friends' faces. Nowadays, we're just kind of going to lay it all out there. We're going to let you know, we're reminding you, and this administration, they're willing to say, like, fuck you to our friends and fuck you to our enemies even more. We don't give a fuck who you are, man, because we're America. And America can do whatever they want to do. And then, if if we can basically maintain this hard line uh Cuba posture, playing with a specific voter like block, um it will cost basically relatively little for electorally, right? I mean, it's just playing into a narrative, you know. It's like a constant thing that they can go at. Anyways, I'm over here mumbling
Now
and rumbling.
has no income. They got all of their income from Venezuela.
Cuba faces tough questions here. I just don't see the country being able to survive without Venezuelan oil.
Jorge Piñon, a senior Energy Institute researcher at the University of Texas, tells ABC News Cuba's economic collapse is imminent.
We don't see a light at the end of this tunnel.
What does taking away Venezuelan oil mean for the country of Cuba?
A total collapse. When you are short diesel, now you're talking about transport. You're talking about diesel for the tractors and agricultures. Now this really impacts the economy of the country.
I started my degree in 1986. 30 years later,
Why does America like to do this to other countries, man? Why do we constantly fuck Latin American countries over and over again?
Looks like it's going down. It's going down for the count. You ever watch a fight?
I have.
They go down for the count.
President Trump has his sights set on another country in the United States' backyard, Cuba.
I don't know if they're going to hold out.
It's one of the U.S.'s closest neighbors and one of Venezuela's closest allies. American presidents have long criticized the Cuban government, but now some say the Trump administration is emboldened to go further than before.
Cuba is a failing nation. I think Cuba will not be able to survive.
From the BBC, I'm Asma Khalid in Washington, D.C. And today on The Global Story, after Venezuela, is Cuba next?
You know, at the end of the day, man, y'all have to understand that the idea behind this entire strategy is pressure, right? We just want to make life as daily life as hard as we possibly can for the Cuban people. Not just the politicians, for the Cuban people. The everyday person just living their life and that doesn't even really like pay attention and has really no say in politics itself are going to be the ones that are punished, essentially. And they are being punished literally at this moment. Either the people force political change, or the government itself right now will just collapse under the strain of this economic pressure the US is currently putting on it, right? I mean, that's my theory.
I'm Will Grant. I'm the BBC correspondent in Mexico for Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean.
Will, I know you've lived in Cuba. You've spent a lot of time reporting from there.
You know, but you really have to, look at the evidence, though. I mean, sorry, guys, my dog is over here messing with my stuff. You know, it's never really worked, right? I mean, we put these types of sanctions historically on them for about 60 years now. And they still exist as a country, right? I mean, we've done everything we can to make the life as physically difficult for them, but they've still persisted. You know, they've still persevered, right? I mean, the people, they ration, they endure. These are very, very resilient people, right? They don't just give in to they haven't just given in to US pressure. Let's see if we can find any other videos. Oh man, dude. Yeah, man, you know, it gets a little frustrating, dude. It gets a little frustrating as to why we're doing these unhumanitarian things to just the people, man. Just the people. Like I said, they've endured 6 decades, bro, of this power without any regime change or collapse, right? Oh, God. You literally put these people into a state of like survival over the course of the last 60 years, man. And when you do that, the regime's just kind of centralized control, right? That's all that they're going to do. The public doesn't revolt very cleanly, it just kind of adapts. Or they exit if they can, right? And this is kind of the same situation, you know, for Cuba, Iran, North Korea, you know, it's all the same. But why do we keep doing it? Why persist, right? That's the question you have to ask yourself. And it's because the costs are externalized. You know, Americans, as me and you, we don't see them. They're cheap, right? Um, and all of the humanitarian suffering are posed onto the Cuban people. Nobody else. None of you have ever felt the implications of U.S. sanctions ever in your life. You don't know what it's like to live in a place like that. You don't understand the geopolitical costs of economic sanctions. The U.S. does not. It doesn't play cleanly across seas. You know, it's very, very much Big Daddy. I always say it again, man. I always say it time and time again. Oh my god, sorry, man. My bad. I'm like highly energized too, bro. I'm tweaking. I down like 2 Red Bulls. So like my mind is like boom, 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 boom. But again, you know, sanctions, they're cheap to impose. You know, we don't have to go to war. You know, Congress doesn't have to declare anything. Uh, and politically, they let leaders look tough without actually going and doing anything. They don't solve anything, right? The pain happens somewhere else. The people uh, who don't get a vote here are the people who are affected, right? Like I said, it's the Cubans who are going to have the Iranians, the Koreans that end up suffering. The people, not us. Shit, not even the politicians. They still living lavishly. They still live fine. They don't give a fuck about the people. That's why these countries are already like the way that they are half of the fucking time, right? Oh, sorry, man. So Cuba's stuck, man. Cuba's kind of fucked at the moment. Uh, the U.S. just keeps squeezing and squeezing and squeezing, and Cuba is refusing to bend. It's refusing to give in. It's refusing to play the way that America wants it to play. And now we're constraining them harder than we have ever done it before. And ordinary people are going to be the ones that live with the blackout. They're the ones that are going to deal with the shortages on food and for water and basic needs and resources. And they're the ones that are going to face uncertainty in this moment. But nobody's even outraged about it. Nobody cares. And it's an island that's literally 80 miles off the coast of Florida, right? These people are enduring through some of the worst economic hardships that any country has to deal with, that, you know, simply because of US imposed sanctions. You know, and this isn't just about Cuba, it's about setting a precedent, right? If the US can go ahead and cut off fuel to a country by simply threatening anyone who helps them, right? That's a tool that they can use time and time again. We can essentially constrain a country to play ball by threatening other countries that are helping them, essentially giving them no help at all. They're going to be left alone. No country can survive or sustain itself without taking in some type of import, especially island nations. So the next time that somebody goes against what a Big Daddy America wants. We'll just go ahead and impose tariffs and sanctions on all the countries that are essentially your trade partners because they can't threaten trade with US, and essentially we'll just lay siege to your country. I mean, that's all it is. It's like back in the day when motherfuckers would go to war with one another and they lived in these city forts and somebody lays siege onto the fort and blocks all the food or resources coming in. Eventually you have to concede, you have to give in, right? Because at a point in time when the people are starving, when the people are dying off, right? When things are getting desperate amongst the people, because like I said, the people are the ones that suffer at the times of egotistical men that won't uh just have a little bit of mercy and morality to get law and policy passed that can benefit both sides. The people suffer. It's always the people. Other countries will see this, and other countries will comply, right? They'll comply quietly, right? Others will start looking for ways to get out from under the U.S. influence altogether, if they can, right? Because at the end of the day, how do you escape U.S. influence? You can't. Not in this modern day economy, right? Where the US essentially, I would say, controls the world economy, controls the global economy. At least, that's my opinion. So we got to ask ourselves, like, what's the end game here? Like I said, is the goal regime change? History says that this won't deliver a regime change. I mean, we've already been doing this time and time again, 60 years, and nothing's changed, right? If the goal is just leverage, then it comes at the cost of long-term trust with other countries, right? We're just going to coerce them to do whatever the fuck we want them to do. It's not built on any good relationships. It's built on the fact that you fear us and you know that we're powerful enough to come and screw you. And if the goal is humanitarian concern, by simply constraining a country and imposing sanctions that will essentially affect the people and cause them to live in third world country conditions, is already clearly showing and indicating that this is not a humanitarian endeavor. So I think the uncomfortable truth that we all need to um realize here is that economic suffering is being used as a weapon, right? Not because it's effective, right? But because it's easy. It's easy, folks. Uh, and the question that I think that people should start asking isn't whether Cuba's government is bad, but that's because in my opinion, that's a separate debate entirely from the fact that we're economically constraining the country so much so that the people are now going to suffer and go through a humanitarian crisis. That's the real debate here. That's what we should be talking about. The real question is whether making millions of civilians, right, suffer and as being mistaken for power or real strategy. Is what we're doing to these people justified simply because we don't agree with their government? Do you, as a Christian, right, a Christian conservative, do you believe that we should be causing people to starve, to go without fresh water, to go without electricity, to go without fuel, simply because a small group of men in that country run it the wrong way? Do you think all people deserve to suffer simply because of that? And if you do, you're a piece of shit. You stand for nothing. You have no morals. And these are the type of people that have moral outrage for like the stupidest things. You know, Cuba sadly fits into this long American pattern where we don't invade directly, right? Where we do these like economic hardships onto the population. We just make it unbearable for the people. And then we just call it foreign policy, right? Um, we've done this to Iran. We've done it to Venezuela. We did it to Iraq in the 90s. We've done it to Nicaragua. We've done it to Afghanistan. And even parts of Latin America during the Cold War, as I talked about in my last 2 streams ago. Different countries, but the same playbook, same, methodology. We do the same thing. This isn't new. They're just pulling motherfucking tactics from my boy Kissinger, bro. That's it. They're looking at the father of foreign fucking policy, my guy, and they're like, oh my god, studying his book, studying his shit like it's the playbook, my guy. I mean, seriously. And the justifications every time is, oh, we're fighting for democracy. Oh, we're fighting for human rights. Oh, we're fighting for freedom. Oh, we're fighting for national security. But none of those reasons are fucking real, right? Those policies were all a bunch of BS. Because the uncomfortable truth, guys, is that economic power, punishment is not about saving people. It's about having leverage. That's what it's all about. Again, people, economic punishment is not about saving people. It's about having leverage. We want leverage. We want them to do whatever we say. So the stock market, right, moves in the direction that we want it. So that American capitalists are bringing in more profits and are, bringing in more money for shareholders. That's all that freaking matters in the eyes of the government nowadays. We do so much fuck shit at the cost of $1, man. We don't protect democracy at all. We protect capitalism at the cost of starving people, right? At the cost of people going without electricity, at the cost of people going without basic needs. That's what our government does. And we call it foreign policy. That's bullshit. Seriously. The US doesn't sanction countries simply because they're authoritarian. That's not the reason. If that were true, half of our allies would be sanctioned. We align all of the time with authoritarian leaders. I say this time and time again that dictatorships, we love dictatorships because it's easy to control one man. It's easy to control a small administration, right? It's not easy to control a populous state that is controlled by the people, where it's harder to sway the government to do what Big Daddy America wants them to go do. They don't have as much leverage with a country that is represented by the people, but by the few who have power and who are authoritarian, who are tyrants, who are oppressors, who are dictators that impose genocide on their people. We don't give a fuck, bro. I literally go check what we did to Guatemala in the 1950s. I think it's like 1954. You ever eat a banana? Yeah, you ever look at the brand? I guarantee you it's either what, like Dole or Chiquita. You know what Chiquita's old fucking name was? United Fruit Company or some shit. Do you know what happened to Guatemala in the 1954? They had a democratically elected, socialist president who was imposing land reform. And that land reform policy would have affected, with United Fruits already, their investments that they already had in Guatemala. So what did they do? They went to Big Daddy America and they went to go lobby. They went to go bitch in fucking Washington. And Washington was like, all right, yeah, we got your back. Then they imposed a CIA-backed fucking coup that led to dictatorship and genocide. Because of a fucking president who was just trying to impose land reform. Right? We don't give a fuck about democracy. We only care about Capitalism. We don't give a fuck if you're authoritarian. We don't care if you're a bad guy, right? We just sanction countries because they refuse to operate within this US-led economic and geopolitical system. I just told you that the entire global economy is ran by the US. The International Economic Committee is in Washington. We run this shit. Everything post World War II. Big Daddy America runs it. That's the truth, man. You know, countries that don't align with us or won't align, won't liberalize on our terms, won't open markets the way that we want them to do, or won't cut ties with our rival nations like Russia or China. This is what happens to them. This is what we do. We economically constrain you and make the lives for your people as hard as we can. Does that feel humanitarian for you? Is that the necessary evil to have capitalism be the king of all economic philosophy? Really? I mean, let's just be real. Cuba's real crime was not communism. It was not communism. It was independence. The same thing that the USA goes and celebrates every July 4th. What we were able to have, what we were able to achieve for ourselves. 250 years this year. And countries fight for that same freedom to have liberty and justice for all within their country. This is the type of things that we do to those countries. We do not care about other countries getting to enjoy these same rights that me and you get to enjoy. Because every time that a possible government comes into power that could maybe give those people that freedom that me and you get to have, Big Daddy USA topples that government and imposes a dictator. And I would say that close to 60 to 70% of every single regime that we've toppled led to some type of genocide, some type of famine, some type of control by the government that limited freedoms and rights of the everyday person. This is not about communism. This is about independence. This is about every time that a country tries to nationalize, every time a country tries to play with the idea of freeing itself from the constraints of the US-led economic system, every time that it tries to liberate itself from the constraints of the geopolitically corrupted system that America has created, we punish them. We make life hard for them. We become the authoritarian tyrant to these people. We don't protect democracy overseas at all. A government that's simply 90 miles off of the US coast that refuses to submit, refuses to privatize in a way that me and you, not even me and you, that our government demands, that the capitalist demands, refuses to fold into the US influence, that is not tolerant to our system that's built on dominance and not coexistence, is punished to the point where people are going to die. that people won't have the basic everyday resources that me and you get to have. The luxuries that me and you get to have when we get off of work. Life's real cozy right now for people that are sitting down watching me right now, right? I'm cozy as fuck sitting here just bitching about the issue. We have to speak up though. We have to be active in our pursuit for good, for justice. What are we doing as a nation? We're on the wrong side of history now. I fear that. I fear that we're on the wrong side of history. I fear that we're on a bad track. Because this doesn't feel like America. This doesn't feel like American values. This doesn't feel like what my great-grandfather went to go fight for in World War II. Every day I ask myself, does this country truly represent democracy? Does it represent freedom? Does it represent liberty and justice for all? You have to ask yourself, is this administration actively seeking the interests of what the founding fathers wanted for this nation? Have they read the Constitution? Have they read the Declaration of Independence? Have you read the articles, all the articles within the Constitution? Have you read the Federalist Papers, right? Do you know what our rights are? Do you know what the amendments are? So time and time again, we won't invade, right? We're not going to invade you. That would be costly. That would be ugly. It would look bad. It would look even worse. We just squeeze, constrain. That's what we've done a lot of since World War II. You know what I'm saying? We fight a lot of shadow wars, sadly. We back regimes that are more aligned to our interests. Sometimes we say it's at the cost of defending capitalism against communism and fighting Soviet Russia, or if it's just simply preserving capital interests of America. We've done it time and time again, and we still do it to this day. It's like every day, man. It's like something new, man. But anyways, we go ahead and we restrict trade, right? We choke the energy supply that they have, right? No oil gets in there, so it leads to no electricity, leads to no productivity, leads to no output for anything. The country just goes basically like, it just like pauses. And what do you expect is going to happen to those people? Do you think it's going to be very civilized when resources start running real thin? When they start running out? It feels fucked up, man. It feels wrong. It feels horrible to weaponize access to the global financial system simply because they're not aligned with capital interest of America. We squeeze you and then we wait, right? The logic is simple. If people are desperate enough, something will break. If people are desperate enough, the system will break. Just lay back, right? Cozy as fuck, relaxed, feet up, and we wait. And we watch the chaos unfold. But I think that one thing that this administration, and Kissinger back in the day, because obviously they're following Kissinger's fucking playbook. Everybody that doesn't know about Henry Kissinger, go ahead and go look him up. You know, like I said, he's the father of foreign policy. He's kind of the one that wrote the playbook on how we should be operating and how we are operating at the moment, right? So what ends up actually like happening with these governments is that they harden. They don't end up softening, right? They become even more authoritarian. A scarcity literally makes states more authoritarian, not less. When the resources start running dry, they start putting the military out there to go ahead and distribute the resources. Everything is, um, everything is, what's it called? Fucking rationed, right? Everything is rationed and controlled by the government. People don't revolt cleanly, right? They survive. That's all they do. They just end up going into this survival mode, right? And that's what I've been saying that they have been doing for like the last 60 years. They either choose to stay and survive, they choose to disengage from everything completely and flee if they can. Those are like the only options. That's all they've been able to have, right? That's the only two options that they have for the last 60 years, right? And the ruling class adapts. The suffering becomes background noise. Nobody even cares because it's so normalized. It's become just a thing, a civic norm, right? And then the system that we claim to oppose often becomes more entrenched. It becomes more powerful, right? It becomes more aligned with the ideas that oppose democracy itself. Look at Iran, man. It's still there. Look at North Korea. It's still there. Look at Cuba. It's still there after 60 fucking years. 60 years. But why, like I said, does the US keep doing this if it doesn't work? Because sanctions are cheap. I'll time and time again say that everything that America does is because of the money, right? Sanctions are not just cheap, but they're politically convenient, right? It allows leaders to look strong without risking the lives of American soldiers, right? We can coerce other countries to do something that would normally require a war back in the day. We avoid all of that. And it makes people like Trump, right? It makes all of his little executive branch monkeys look powerful. People who are not powerful, weak individuals are showcased in a powerful light. It's just geopolitical coercion, right? That's all it is. It doesn't require Congress to declare war. They don't show up as flag draped coffins or on the evening news. Parents don't have to sit in front of the TV looking at names every night and seeing if their sons were killed in action or missing in action. It doesn't require us to do all of that dirty, ugly work anymore. It saves us from having to go through another Vietnam. Because there's a reason why Vietnam is not taught in the history classes. Because Nam was a very, very difficult, a very, very complex war that took almost 2 decades. And we lost. And we were not popular from it. Either, whether or not you're talking about, foreign, whether people looked at us like across the world in a good light, or within whether or not the people themselves looked at us in a good light, they didn't. There's a lot going on in the 70s. The 70s was perhaps one of the craziest political time periods of American history, next to right now. There's a lot of shit that popped off in the 70s. And I just think that doing shit like this allows for Americans to not suffer anymore, right? The suffering happens far away. To people, like I said, who don't vote here, who don't have any representation, don't have a voice in America to speak on what's going on in those countries, whether or not they're aligned with America. Dude, there are people in Cuba that eventually become refugees that are supportive of America. These people end up suffering the sanctions and suffering the implications of those sanctions that America imposes on them. Do you think that all of these people that have nothing deserve what we do to them? Sanctions are basically just a power that's exercised at a distance, man. And it's all for the purpose of leverage. All at the purpose of leverage. When the US, does this kind of thing to Cuba, you have to understand that, like I said before, it's just example setting. We're not just punishing Cuba. We are sending a message to everyone else that this is what happens when you step outside of the system. Everybody. Doesn't matter who you are. You could be our best friend, our closest ally. You step out of line, and this right here could happen to you too. You either play my way or you don't play at all. That's America's philosophy. That's essentially the philosophy and the mindset of the entire administration at the moment, right? This matters more than whether Cuba changes people. It's deeper than that. And other countries at the moment, they see it, but they have to stay quiet because they don't know what to do. This is the first time America has flexed its muscles the way that it has in a very long time. It's the first time that America has showed its teeth, right? We're baring our teeth at people. Some comply quietly, and others are starting to hedge, right? They're starting to find a way to escape the constraints of the America cartel that is this administration. So, countries, they're either choosing to comply or they deepen ties with places like China or Russia at the moment, right? Not because they love them, but because they don't want to be next. Because it looks like the next best option. People are literally right now, other countries are weighing whether or not it's more beneficial to be a US ally or a China and Russia ally. That's fucking crazy, man. For the first time in not even for the first time in decades, man. You got European countries questioning whether or not it's more in their interest to be buddy with China or Russia than to be buddy with America, because they don't know whether or not America is gonna fuck them. They're afraid of America. That's insane. We're supposed to be protecting the world. That was the whole America expanding across the entire world justification, right? The reason why we have embassies and military bases all over the fucking world was because we wanted to police it. Now I'm starting to fucking think that it's just because we were imperialistic and we never stopped being so, and we just really, really wanted to put our foot in every single place in the world, that we wanted to have a say-so in every economic and geopolitical decision that happens in every minute and, big country. Whether you're big or you're small, you still got to play ball with America. I mean, that's how you start fracturing the global trust system that has been established since World War II. That all of the greats, man, of that era, all of the work that they did to create this unified system, right? This system and this group of individuals that had never existed before in the interest of protecting the world. We went from being the pioneers of doing of protecting democracy to quickly within like 10 years letting all of that shit crumble and showing that it needed to be more about capitalism, needed more about preserving corporate interests across the world. We don't give a fuck about democracy, bro. All of that has just been unraveled. You know what I'm saying? Everything that they've sown over the course of the last 60 years has been just unraveled stitch by stitch. And I'm afraid that, those relationships are so fractured, they're so broken that they can never be healed. So when people say, well, Cuba deserves it, they're missing the point entirely. They are missing the point. The question that you have to be asking yourself isn't whether or not Cuba's government is good or bad, right? You have to ask whether collective punishment of civilians is a legitimate tool of power, right? And whether it actually delivers the outcomes that it promises. Because if your strategy just relies on suffering to create obedience, you're not practicing diplomacy, right? You're practicing coercion and calling it values. And history has a very clear lesson here, in my opinion, right? Coercion buys compliance in the short term. Let me think how I want to say this. Coercion buys compliance in the short term, but resentment in the long term and instability is everywhere in between. Right? That's not propaganda, people. It's pattern recognition. So, I'll leave you guys with that. It was nice ranting for a little bit. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, I felt inclined to speak on this today. I don't know. I saw a couple clips this morning and watched Hassan yesterday speak on it and watched the news and kind of just got a little bit informed about the issue because, like many of you, I was complacent to the issue. I didn't really understand what was going on. I mean, I understand what we've done to them historically, but I wasn't really aware of the fact that the policy had shifted from just sanctioning them to sanctioning other countries who might help Cuba. And I had to get on here today and I had to, inform y'all and had to speak on the topic, speak on the issues, man. But I gotta go ahead and dip out, man. It was cool chatting, man. Appreciate y'all for hanging out with me, man. Until the next stream, y'all take it easy, stay safe, and yeah, man. I'll probably be on Friday. Catch you guys later.